I want to get the business of the city completed today. Mr. Hogue obviously is going to stay where he's at. We've made our concerns known. It's a matter of public record. We have two options. Either we can go ahead and close the meeting now and leave in protest of Mr. Hogue being there, or we can just we voiced our concerns, our opinions. Let's just move on. We can do one of the two things. And
well, let me just add one thing. Although I said, you know, I had a talk with Todd Weiler the other day. You know, and we talked about, you know, of course, you know, reasonable people can disagree on things. This is one thing. I don't think reasonable people can disagree on this. I think this is right. I think this is very clear. This is crystal clear in state law.
There's no question in my mind about
oh, I know. I'm just saying. You know, I just wanted to add that. I think
sure.
it's you know, it's crystal clear. I don't think there's you know, the only reason that there is a question of interpretation is that somebody wants to muddy the waters, you know, to get their own way. I think it's crystal clear.
Here again, I agree with everything that's been said. But I would choose to get on with the business of the city.
And I can see your point, Craig. It's important to move on, but it's also important that it is totally clear where the council is coming from and where Mr. Hogue and Mayor Anderson are coming from. Mr. Maxwell had a comment.
I do. The thing that concerns me, Mr. Hogue, with you sitting there is I don't want that to be construed that it's the consent of the council that you have that position. So, you know, aside from physically getting up and moving you, which nobody wants to do, we just don't want that interpreted as, well, the council has consented because we've never asked you to move out of that position. We have asked you and you've refused to do it, so be it. I don't think there's any ambiguity in either our city ordinance or the state code. Todd, if you want to speak to some ambiguity you feel there is, that would be fine. If you think this is, well, there's some ambiguity, you should probably state your case.
If you want my opinion, I'm happy to give it to you. And I want to state, you know, a couple of things up front. I never saw this until I sat down at the tables. I have had a chance to read through it. I was never asked by the council about this, and I understand why. I'm not complaining, I'm just stating some things. A couple other things I want you all to know, because I told Jess this yesterday in a telephone conversation, and he was surprised. The mayor never asked me about firing Brent Bluth before she did it, either time. And the mayor never asked me about hiring Dave Hogue. I've never been asked, and I don't see it as my role to insert myself into and tell you how to do your jobs. I'm happy to answer legal questions. I'm happy to give my opinion when asked. If you're asking my opinion on this ordinance, I think this ordinance is unusual. Well, let me back up. Advice and consent, I don't think there's any ambiguity there, and I'm going to disagree with Mr. Hogue and agree with the council. You know, advice and consent is very simple. You need the council's approval, and it's no different for the Senate approving the president's nomination of a candidate to the Supreme Court than it is, I don't think, for an administrative services director in the city. Now, clearly, there is, in my mind, no ambiguity about advice and consent. I think the mayor makes a selection and she brings it before the city council, and the city council can vote it up or down. And I don't know that process has been followed, but clearly if the city council has made its will known, if the mayor were to bring David Hogue here and say, will you approve him as the administrative service director, we have a resolution and now an ordinance saying no. In fact, it's saying hell no. So I think that there is no advice and consent, you know, from the council for David Hogue to serve as the administrative services director. And I don't see any ambiguity in the state code or the city code. The only place that there's ambiguity, and this is what I told Jess Kelly in a telephone call yesterday around lunchtime, is that I don't have the code in front of me, so forgive me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's 10-3-819. The only ambiguity that's worth discussing is that a mayor may solely appoint her deputies and assistants. That's the only ambiguity. There is no ambiguity in my mind about the city ordinances. But there's also no ambiguity that if a state law entitles anyone to do something, and if a city ordinance is enacted or a city resolution that contradicts that state law, if there's a conflict between state law and city law, there's no ambiguity. The state law will always trump, okay? And so I think the only question, the only thing worth talking about legally is if the mayor takes the position, whatever she calls him, if she calls him administrative services director, if she calls him anything, if the state law says a mayor can solely appoint her deputies and assistants, and the city council says, no, you can't, that's the ambiguity. There's no question that the term administrative services director has been bantered around by several people with David Hogue, and there's no question in my mind that that the mayor and David Hogue have not followed the city ordinances for having him appointed to that position. Okay, but I think if you're going to force, if someone's going to force this before a judge, the only question for the judge will be is, can the mayor hire David Hogue as her mayor or deputy and give him responsibilities as a city employee or not? And that one, I think, a judge will decide. But I think that with the mayor being the CEO right now, that answer will probably yes, she can. And Nancy, before you comment, let me just say two things. I understand the council's frustrated. If our roles were reversed, I would be very frustrated. If my role in the mayor's was reversed, I would be frustrated. I've been on a city council. There are no easy answers for these questions. And I understand that I'm going to just guess that this ordinance is coming out of some frustration. Let me tell you what I think is unusual about the ordinance. I think it's very unusual to name an individual in an ordinance. An ordinance is a law. You're making a law about David Hogue, and I think that's a little bit unusual, okay? But that's how it's been drafted. I wasn't asked to draft it. I wasn't asked for input. I think it's unusual for a city council in where none of you have been appointed by the mayor as department heads. I think it's unusual for a city council to attempt to direct city staff or to direct the day-to-day operations of the city. I think that the model that we use in Utah is the council is the board of directors, the governing body, the city council. They set the policy, and then they let the staff and they let the people with the the CEO or the city manager, whoever you want to call it, run the day-to-day details. And so I think it's a little unusual that in section 4 and some of the other sections that you're telling staff what they can and can't do, and I think you're creating an awkward situation for staff, because either they're going to listen to the mayor, who is the CEO, and her deputy or assistant, or they're going to listen to you, and no man can serve two masters. So I think you're putting the staff in a very awkward position, where they're going to have to declare their loyalty to either the council or to the mayor, and I frankly don't think that's fair. Is it legal?
Those are two things that troubled me about it too.
Is it legal?
We're making a law, regarding.
And so I'm going to shut up now. That's all I have to say about this.
Let it be known that staff has been in a difficult position for a long time.
And I recognize that.
And they have been asked by the mayor, and I have been told by many of people in staff, to declare loyalty to her. And they, because they are good people and good employees, have been loyal to their responsibilities and are doing the best they can under very difficult circumstances. It is obvious to me that Mayor Anderson and Mr. Hogue don't give a hoot about what the council desires to do. Whether or not they like it or not, the council has authority in the decisions to run the city. The city is not running in the right direction right now. You are not aware of how difficult your presence in our city is making to really be able to run our city, Mr. Hogue. And I am sorry, this is not a personal thing to you. The reason why your name appears in an ordinance is because the difficulties that your presence here, breaking the law, cause our city. It is our duty, our responsibility to protect our city. If you read the ordinance carefully, you will find out that we are not authorizing any payments from taxpayers' money to hire you. So we have voted this ordinance. You appear to have total desire to ignore it. If you really want to help our city,